We have our mostly blank document open from the previous chapter. If you didn't follow along with us up to this point, you can find a similar file in your Chapter 3 project file folder. Don't be confused that it looks like just a blank document though. It actually has page settings that have been modified to match what we'll be using from the previous chapter, and it also has a top and bottom border. If we look very carefully, we can see those borders as well. Before we get to typing though, I want to tell you what to expect from Word. Every Word document has a normally invisible marker that tells it where the end of the document is. We can actually see that if we go into our draft view. So from the View tab, we can click the Draft button or the Draft option. And here we can see this marker that I'm talking about. It's this little horizontal line. That shows us the end of the document. We also have the vertical blinking line, which everybody knows is the cursor, and that tells us where our current location is within the document. Because this is a blank page, they're right next to each other, but of course the end of document marker may be further down than where we're actually working in a document. As we type, characters or white space that are added to the document as we type are going to push that end of document marker further down, and of course the cursor is going to go to the right. As a word processor, content prefers to be placed left to right from the top down. This is called inline, and it's what we'd expect text to do on a page. As we'll see in some later chapters, we do have tools that allow us to freely place content on the page, but for now, text is always placed inline, following that left, right, top, bottom progression. We can also never place anything below the end of the document marker. Now, it may seem like we can, but if we do, the marker actually moves. So really, it's impossible to place anything beyond that marker. We probably won't care at all about that normally. It just happens to be in the background, and I wanted us to understand that that's how the document actually works, as well as how the flow works. What we do need to be aware of is how to get text onto the page. So let's go ahead and move back to our print layout view. That's our first button on the view bar. And of course, we are zoomed out quite a bit on the document so we can see the entire page. In our case, we're out at about 60%, which will be helpful for what we're going to do first. Naturally, and as many of us know if we've ever used Word before, we can just start typing. But my question to you first is, what if we don't want to have the lines of text starting at the top left of the page? That's the natural place for it to happen, remember. What if, for example, we wanted this to be maybe a cover page, whose first line or the title of the document was going to be about a third of the page down, and also centered left to right? Well, that brings in a different way to work with the text. We could press our Enter key. And as we press that, we could go Enter, Enter, Enter like I'm doing now to move that cursor down the page to where we want it to go. And then we could go back to the Home tab and we could choose Align Center. Now we'll talk all about these tools up on the ribbon a little bit later, but to get us started, I just want you to know that those are kind of the steps that we'd normally have to do. Enter, 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 maybe 5 to 10 times, and then we would have to go ahead and center it horizontally. I'm going to press Control-All on the keyboard to select all those hard returns that I just did. And then I'm going to press the Delete key on my keyboard to get rid of them, basically putting me back where I was to begin with. So this is again just a blank page. Now I want to show you a shortcut instead of doing all of that entering and all of that alignment. It's something that has been available in Word for a long time. It's just a lot of people don't really know that it even exists. It's something called Click and Type. And I want you to look at my cursor very carefully. If I move it towards the left side of the screen, it's the angled left arrow. And if it helps, you can go ahead and click one time on the document to make sure you're seeing the same things that I am. At this point, I'm seeing something called the I-beam because it looks like a capital I. And notice that there's text over to the right of this little cursor. As I move towards the center, eventually the I-beam is there, but now the text pops to the bottom or below the I. And if I continue to go, it goes back over to the right side, and then eventually it actually pops over to the left side. These are important indicators for Click and Type. They represent left-aligned text, center-aligned text, and right-aligned text. When you're in a hurry and you want to go ahead and insert some text at the end of a document, and that is important. Click and Type does not work when you already have content on the page. It has to go after the content. In our case, we don't have any, so we can go ahead and just click and type. So if I want my title to be centered on the page right about there, I'm going to place the I-beam with the little text below it and double-click. Now, all I've done is the equivalent of enter, 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 and then align center, but it was much quicker. Now we're free to go ahead and type our title. Our title is Strategy for Organizational Success. Now I know this is really difficult to see, but you have to trust me. It says Strategy for Organizational Success. We'll zoom in a second, but since we're trying to see the whole page, I want to leave it zoomed out for now. The next thing we're going to do is press Enter. That's called a hard return. That's going to create a new paragraph. Now we're going to go ahead and type the company name, which is You Got It Training Company. The reason I didn't want us to zoom in is so that we can continue to see the entire page. Now I'm just rolling my mouse wheel a little bit so we can see the bottom of the page, and we're going to continue to use click and type. But this time we want to place something so it's right aligned at the bottom, and this is going to be the company address. So what we want to do is get that I-beam and make sure that we have the pointer so that the text is to the left of it. Not to the right, but to the left. You kind of have to get almost over to the margin to do that. Then we'll double click, and we can continue to type. This time you notice it's automatically right aligned without all of those enters and without having to click the alignment key. The address is very simple, P.O. Box 1234. And this time I'm going to hold my Shift key while I press Enter to create a line break, but not a new paragraph. We'll talk more about that later. The city, state, and zip is just going to be somewhere Idaho 12345-1234 is the zip code. You, of course, can use your own address if you would prefer. We'll do Shift Return one more time, and we'll do a phone number, 208-555-1234. And lastly, we're going to do a URL or a website. This is going to be www.yougotit.info. So again, one last Shift Return and the web address. That's all we want on our title page, so at this point we are going to just press Enter until we get to the top of page 2. In my case, I have to press it once, and that's it. If you may have double-clicked to do that address block a little bit higher, you might have to press your Enter key a couple more times. Just make sure that your cursor is now at the top of the second page. We may need to scroll up a little bit, which I'm again doing with my mouse. And because the text we were just typing was right aligned, our cursor is all the way over on the right side of the page. We do want to fix this, so we're going to go to the Home tab if you're not there already. We're going to go to the paragraph group, and we're simply going to click the left align button to get that back over to the left side, which is where we want to continue to type from this point forward. Now we'll go ahead and type the very first thing that's going to be on our second page, which is just Table of Contents. We'll press Enter this time. Don't hold Shift, just Enter on its own. That's going to create a new paragraph. And the title of our first section is going to be Executive Summary. And we'll do Enter one more time. If we were to continue to type, text will automatically wrap at the end of each line without needing to press Enter. Pressing Enter is something we did on a typewriter, but we don't have to do on a keyboard or on a computer. It's also going to create new pages as we fill up the previous one. This is known as text wrap and auto pagination, in case you kind of wanted to know the technical terms. Basically, it just means that we type and everything's going to flow the way that it needs to naturally across